The stars shimmered cold and distant beyond the massive viewport of the command bridge. Lieutenant Zhang sipped her coffee, the warmth a stark contrast to the chill running through her as she recalled the message that had echoed across the void just days earlier. It had been a transmission broadcast to the entire galaxy, a warning and a promise. The alien coalition had made the first move, launching their invasion on a dozen human frontier worlds. They had expected resistance, perhaps even defiance, but what they encountered was something else entirely. Humanity, scarred by centuries of internal conflict, had long ago mastered the art of war in ways the coalition had underestimated. The message from Earth Command had been as calm as it was chilling. Since you chose war, let us show you how it's done. Now Zhang stood on the bridge of the Resolute, a flagship of the Terran Defense Fleet, overseeing the largest counteroffensive in human history. Before her, the battlefield unfolded, a tapestry of chaos and destruction. The alien ships, once confident and sleek, were now scrambling against the onslaught of humanity's coordinated might. Tactical bombers screamed through the enemy lines like hunting falcons, their precision strikes reducing enemy dreadnoughts to flaming wreckage. Swarms of drone fighters moved like schools of fish, weaving between enemy ships and exploiting every vulnerability. The bridge hummed with focused energy. Officers at their stations barked commands, fingers dancing over glowing interfaces. Zhang's role was tactical oversight, but for now, her job was to watch, to predict the enemy's next move before they made it. She sipped her coffee again, a faint smile tugging at her lips as one of the alien battlecruisers disintegrated under a well-coordinated barrage. Lieutenant Zhang, the voice of Commander Reyes crackled over her earpiece. "Report. The enemy fleet is in disarray," Zhang replied, her tone steady. "Their formations are breaking down. Their flagship is exposed. Recommend we deploy the Eclipse unit for a surgical strike." "Do it," Reyes said without hesitation. Zhang relayed the command, and moments later, the bridge's forward screens zoomed in on a sleek black vessel, the Eclipse, humanity's deadliest stealth ship. It shimmered into view for a fraction of a second before vanishing again, cloaked from sight and sensors alike. The alien flagship never saw it coming. One moment it stood defiant, the centerpiece of their fleet. The next, a brilliant explosion tore through it, silencing its command systems and scattering the remaining enemy ships. Cheers erupted on the bridge, but Zhang didn't join them. She knew better than to celebrate too soon. Humanity had won battles before, only to find itself facing new and more desperate attacks. This war wasn't over, it had only just begun. Her terminal beeped, drawing her attention to a decrypted message from Earth Command. It was brief, but it carried the weight of 1,000 years of human history. To all fleet commanders, no half measures. End this war decisively. Show them what happens when you wake a sleeping giant. Zhang's eyes narrowed. She turned to the nearest officer. Prepare the fleet for a full-scale assault. We're taking the fight to their homeworld. As the Resolute surged forward, leading the charge, Zhang couldn't help but feel a grim sense of satisfaction. The alien coalition had underestimated humanity, believing them fractured and weak. But they had made a fatal mistake. They had united humanity under a single purpose. And now, as the stars lit up with the fires of war, Zhang knew they would teach the galaxy a lesson it would never forget. The Resolute accelerated, the hum of its massive engines resonating through the deck plates. The crew braced themselves, their movements fluid yet precise, like the gears of a finely tuned machine. Lieutenant Zhang adjusted the holodisplay in front of her, bringing up the tactical layout of the battle. Human fleets were converging across multiple sectors, closing in on the alien coalition's remaining strongholds. This was not just retaliation, it was a reckoning. As the ship breached the debris field of the shattered enemy fleet, the viewport offered a grim spectacle. Wreckage floated aimlessly, shattered hulls, torn wings, and lifeless vessels that had once carried soldiers confident in their superiority. Humanity's fury had reduced them to nothing more than drifting monuments to their hubris. And yet, Zhang felt no triumph, only a cold determination. There was still work to be done. "Lieutenant," a young ensign called out from the sensor station. Long-range scans are detecting an enemy fleet regrouping near Delta 9. They're deploying orbital defenses around one of their colony hubs. Zhang studied the data. The colony hub was vast, a planet-sized fortress surrounded by a network of shipyards and defense platforms. It wasn't just a strategic location, it was one of the coalition's cultural centers, a symbol of their dominance. And now it was humanity's next target. Send the coordinates to Fleet Command, Zhang ordered. And prepare a jump calculation. We hit them before they finish their defenses. The Resolute accelerated, the hum of its massive engines resonating through the deck plates. The crew braced themselves, their movements fluid yet precise, like the gears of a finely tuned machine. Lieutenant Zhang adjusted the holodisplay in front of her, bringing up the tactical layout of the battle. Human fleets were converging across multiple sectors, closing in on the alien coalition's remaining strongholds. This was not just retaliation, it was a reckoning. As the ship breached the debris field of the shattered enemy fleet, the viewport offered a grim spectacle. Wreckage floated aimlessly, shattered hulls, torn wings, and lifeless vessels that had once carried soldiers confident in their superiority. Humanity's fury had reduced them to nothing more than drifting monuments to their hubris. And yet, Zhang felt no triumph, only a cold determination. There was still work to be done. Lieutenant, a young ensign called out from the sensor station. Long-range scans are detecting an enemy fleet regrouping near Delta 9. They're deploying orbital defenses around one of their colony hubs. Zhang studied the data. The colony hub was vast, a planet-sized fortress surrounded by a network of shipyards and defense platforms. It wasn't just a strategic location, it was one of the coalition's cultural centers, a symbol of their dominance. And now it was humanity's next target. Send the coordinates to Fleet Command, Zhang ordered. And prepare a jump calculation. We hit them before they finish their defenses. The bridge fell into a synchronized rhythm as orders were carried out. Navigation officers calculated the hyperspace route, weapons teams ran diagnostics on the ship's arsenal, and Zhang monitored every detail with a sharp eye. She had no room for error. Not now, not ever. The hyperspace jump was as smooth as it was brief. One moment, the Resolute was surrounded by the cold expanse of empty space. The next, it emerged into chaos. The coalition's orbital defenses had already engaged several human scout ships, but their formation was incomplete, their firepower spread too thin. It was the perfect opening. All ships, advance and engage, Zhang commanded. The fleet obeyed with precision. Destroyers and cruisers surged forward, their energy weapons slicing through the void. Fighters poured out of hangar bays, forming intricate swarms that darted between enemy defenses. The Resolute itself unleashed a barrage of railgun slugs and plasma torpedoes, its firepower unmatched in the sector. But the coalition wasn't finished yet. From the shadow of the planet, massive enemy carriers emerged, deploying waves of fighter drones that filled the sensors with hostile signatures. The battle escalated into a symphony of destruction. Zhang remained calm, issuing orders with the clarity of someone who had trained for this her entire life. Redirect the Sovereign and Atlas to flank the carriers, she said. Deploy jamming drones to disrupt their targeting systems. And someone get me a firing solution on that orbital cannon. The Resolute's targeting array locked onto the cannon, a massive structure embedded in the orbital ring. It was capable of devastating a capital ship with a single shot, but its charging sequence left it vulnerable. Zhang watched as the firing solution finalized. Fire, she said. The bridge shook as the main gun discharged, sending a kinetic projectile hurtling through space. It struck the orbital cannon dead center, detonating its power core. A blinding explosion consumed the structure, and cheers once again erupted on the bridge. Enemy fleet is collapsing, the ensign reported. Their carriers are retreating. Do not let them escape, Zhang snapped. Pursue and eliminate. No survivors. The order was harsh, but it was necessary. The coalition had to understand that there would be no sanctuary, no safe harbor from humanity's wrath. This war would end only when they surrendered unconditionally, or when their last ship was reduced to ashes. As the final remnants of the enemy fleet were hunted down, Zhang received another communication from Earth Command. It was a live feed, displaying Admiral Marlowe's stern face. "Lieutenant Zhang," Marlowe said, "the coalition leadership has gone into hiding on their capital world. Reconnaissance teams have identified its location, but it's heavily fortified. We're sending the fleet to finish this." Zhang nodded. "Understood, Admiral. The Resolute stands ready." "Good," Marlowe replied. "This war ends with their surrender, or their annihilation." The transmission ended, and Zhang turned to her crew. "Prepare for the final assault," she said. "We're going to their capital. And we're bringing the full weight of humanity with us." As the fleet regrouped and plotted its course, Zhang took a moment to stare out the viewport. The stars no longer seemed cold and distant. They burned with purpose, a reminder of humanity's resilience and its capacity for both creation and destruction. The coalition had started this war, but humanity would finish it. When the fleet finally jumped into hyperspace, Zhang's thoughts returned to the message that had started it all. "Since you chose war, let us show you how it's done." They had chosen war. Now they would learn what that truly meant. The journey to the coalition capital world was a silent march of vengeance. The human fleet, now a force of overwhelming might, moved like a dark tide across the stars, leaving devastation in its wake. Every crew member aboard the Resolute knew the stakes. This wasn't just about survival. It was about sending a message to the galaxy. Humanity had endured too much, sacrificed too much, to allow this aggression to go unpunished. Lieutenant Zhang stood on the bridge as the fleet emerged from hyperspace into the heart of the enemy's domain. The coalition's capital world, Thalassen Prime, was a glittering jewel in the black void, surrounded by layers of orbital defenses, planetary shield generators, and an armada of ships larger than anything humanity had faced before. The sight of it should have been intimidating. Instead, it only steeled her resolve. "All ships, report status," Zhang ordered. "Fleet is holding position," one officer reported. "All systems green and weapons hot." "Enemy forces are mobilizing," added another. "They're locking onto our position." Zhang nodded, her mind already calculating the odds. The coalition had thrown everything they had into this defense. If they lost here, they lost everything. But Zhang wasn't intimidated. Humanity had already faced extinction countless times, by their own hands, by nature, and now by these aliens who had thought them weak. Each time, humanity had risen stronger. This time would be no different. "Open a channel to the fleet," Zhang said. The communications officer nodded, and moments later, her voice carried across every human ship in the system. "This is Lieutenant Zhang to all ships," she began. "We are here to end this war. The coalition thinks they can hide behind their fortresses, their fleets, their pride. They think they can outlast us. They are wrong. Today, we show them the cost of their arrogance. No retreat, no hesitation. Humanity stands united, and we do not stop until they kneel, or until nothing remains." The response was a chorus of acknowledgments, firm and resolute. Every captain, every soldier, every pilot knew their role in what was to come. "Target their orbital defenses," Zhang commanded. "Focus fire on their planetary shield generators. We'll clear a path for the ground assault." The fleet surged forward, weapons blazing. Human ships unleashed their fury in coordinated waves, overwhelming the coalition's initial defenses. Orbital gun platforms erupted in fireballs, their debris scattering into the void. Enemy fighters swarmed to intercept, but they were met with relentless swarms of human drones and tactical squadrons. The Resolute spearheaded the assault, its railguns and missile batteries tearing through enemy ships with ruthless efficiency. The coalition fought back with desperation. Massive battlecruisers emerged from the planet's shadow, their hulls bristling with weaponry. Energy beams lanced through the human formation, slicing through smaller ships and forcing the fleet to adapt. Zhang remained calm, directing reinforcements and countermeasures with the precision of a surgeon. "Redirect the Vanguard and Prometheus to cover our left flank," she ordered. "Deploy bombers to disable that carrier group. And someone take out that damned artillery cruiser." The battle raged on, an inferno of destruction that lit up the entire system. Slowly but surely, humanity gained the upper hand. Coalition ships began to falter, their formations breaking as human forces pushed closer to the planet. "Lieutenant," the sensor officer called out, "the planetary shield is weakening. We're detecting fluctuations in its energy field." Zhang's lips curled into a grim smile. "Relay targeting data to the fleet. Focus all fire on the generators. Let's finish this." The concentrated barrage was devastating. Railgun slugs, plasma torpedoes, and energy beams slammed into the planet's defenses, tearing through the shield generators one by one. Finally, with a brilliant flash, the planetary shield collapsed, leaving Thalassan Prime exposed. "Planetary defenses are down," the ensign reported. "Ground assault teams are standing by." "Deploy them," Zhang said. "I want every key installation secured or destroyed. No mercy." Dropships descended from human carriers, swarming toward the planet like a rain of fire. Zhang watched as the screens displayed the unfolding invasion. Coalition troops on the surface scrambled to respond, but they were no match for the precision and ferocity of humanity's soldiers. Armored units rolled through their defenses, infantry units swept through cities and strongholds, and orbital strikes silenced any resistance too stubborn to surrender. The coalition's leadership attempted to flee, but they had nowhere to run. Human intelligence had anticipated every move, and their escape routes were systematically cut off. One by one, their leaders were captured or eliminated. By the end of the day, Thalassan Prime was under human control. Zhang stood on the bridge as the final reports came in. The coalition had been defeated. Their fleets were in ruins, their armies shattered, their leaders disgraced. The war was over. A communication from Earth Command lit up her console. Admiral Marlowe appeared on the screen, his expression stern but victorious. "Well done, Lieutenant," he said. "The coalition has surrendered. Their worlds are ours. Humanity has secured its place in the galaxy." Zhang nodded. "It wasn't just me, sir. It was all of us." Marlowe allowed a rare smile. "Indeed. Let this be a lesson to anyone else who thinks they can challenge us. Humanity does not start wars, but when they come to us, we finish them." As the transmission ended, Zhang allowed herself a moment of reflection. The stars beyond the viewport no longer seemed cold. They were alive with possibility, with the promise of a future humanity had earned with blood and fire. And as the fleet prepared to return home, Zhang knew that future would never again be taken for granted. Humanity had shown the galaxy what it meant to fight. Now, perhaps they could show it what it meant to build. The aftermath of humanity's victory over the coalition was as much a test as the war itself. With the coalition leadership captured or dead, their worlds lay exposed, vulnerable, and terrified. Cities on coalition planets burned in the wake of orbital bombardments. Civilian populations huddled in the ruins of once proud metropolises, their eyes turned skyward to watch the black silhouettes of Terran warships blotting out the stars. The victorious Terran fleet established orbit above Thalassan Prime, and the Resolute took its place at the center of it all. Lieutenant Zhang gazed down at the surface below, where smoke curled upward like black veins. The battle was over, but the galaxy was watching. Humanity had proven its strength, but strength alone wouldn't be enough to ensure peace. If they handled this poorly, they would only sow the seeds for another war. "Lieutenant," Commander Reyes said as he approached, his voice low, "we've received the terms from Earth Command. It's not exactly lenient." Zhang raised an eyebrow and gestured for him to continue. "They're demanding unconditional surrender across all coalition worlds," Reyes explained. "Complete disarmament, forced reparations for all damages, and permanent governance of coalition systems under Terran oversight. It's total domination. Zhang frowned. She had expected harsh terms, but this went beyond what was necessary. Humanity had won, and the coalition needed to pay for their aggression, but this felt like something darker, a desire not just for peace, but for control. Still, it wasn't her place to question orders. Not openly. Send the terms to the remaining coalition representatives, Zhang said, her tone neutral. Let's see if they have any fight left in them. The coalition representatives, what was left of them, gathered aboard the Resolute under heavy guard. They were a broken assembly of alien leaders, their pride shattered along with their fleets. Zhang stood at the head of the meeting room, her black tactical uniform immaculate, her demeanor cold. "We received your message," one of the representatives said, their voice trembling. They were an avian-like species, their feathers dulled with soot and grime. "These terms, they're not terms at all. They're a death sentence for our people." Zhang regarded them with an unflinching gaze. "Your people started this war. You invaded our colonies, killed our civilians, and forced us to respond. Now you're facing the consequences." "You've already defeated us," another representative said, their reptilian eyes narrowing. "Must you destroy everything we have left? Do you want us to live under your boot forever?" Zhang hesitated. These were valid questions, but she couldn't show weakness. "Not here. Not now. Your leadership made their choice when they declared war on humanity. If you want mercy, it's not my decision to make. But it's your decision how we remember this moment," the avian leader said, their voice firming. "If you crush us entirely, we will have no choice but to wait for the day we can rise again. Is that what you want? To live in constant fear of rebellion?" Zhang's jaw tightened. The words hit harder than she expected. She had seen enough of war to know that total victory could be as dangerous as defeat. A beaten enemy could become a bitter enemy, one that waited for centuries to strike again. "Lieutenant," Rhea's voice came through her earpiece, breaking her thoughts. "Earth Command wants your report on the negotiations." Zhang took a deep breath. The weight of history felt like it was pressing on her shoulders. She could follow orders to the letter, enforce the terms without question, and ensure that humanity ruled the galaxy with an iron fist. But something inside her rebelled at the thought. The galaxy didn't need more conquerors. It needed balance. "I'll handle this," she said, cutting the channel. She turned back to the coalition representatives. "Your worlds will be disarmed. That's non-negotiable. But I will push for amendments to the reparations and oversight terms. You will rebuild under your own governments, with our guidance, not our control. Humanity will protect itself, but we're not here to destroy your people." The representatives exchanged glances, a flicker of hope crossing their weary faces. "And Earth Command?" one of them asked. "Will they agree?" "They'll agree because I'll make them agree," Zhang said firmly. "This war is over. Let's make sure it stays that way." The conversation with Earth Command was anything but easy. Admiral Marlowe's expression on the comm screen was carved from stone, his eyes narrowing as Zhang explained her position. "You overstep, Lieutenant," he said sharply. "The terms are clear, and they come from the highest authority. This is not your decision to make." "With respect, Admiral," Zhang replied, her voice steady, "this is a decision we all have to live with. If we crush them completely, we create a galaxy full of enemies waiting for revenge. But if we show strength tempered with reason, we create allies. This isn't just about ending a war, it's about shaping the future." Marlowe's silence stretched for what felt like an eternity. Finally, he sighed, the lines of his face softening. "You're playing a dangerous game, Lieutenant. But you may be right. I'll take your recommendations to the Council." The channel closed, and Zhang exhaled, her shoulders relaxing slightly. It wasn't a victory, but it was a step forward. She turned back to the bridge, where her crew watched her with quiet admiration. "Send a message to the fleet," she said. "The war is over. Now we rebuild. Together." As the stars stretched endlessly beyond the viewport, Zhang knew humanity's future wasn't just about survival. It was about proving that their strength could be used for more than destruction. In the cold void of space, under the shadow of war, she had found the faintest spark of something new: hope. The aftermath of the war settled over the galaxy like dust after a storm, lingering, heavy, and impossible to ignore. The Terran fleet, once the instrument of righteous fury, now orbited coalition worlds as uneasy guardians. Coalition leaders across their fractured alliance wrestled with a bitter truth. They were alive, but only because humanity allowed it. The scars of war were still fresh, etched into the shattered cities of their worlds and the collective memory of their people. For Lieutenant Zhang, the war's end was only the beginning of a more subtle, yet equally dangerous battle. As the Resolute maintained its position above Thalassan Prime, she found herself overseeing the fragile peace that hung by a thread. Every day brought new challenges. Coalition planets teetered on the brink of rebellion, their populations seething with resentment. Even among humanity's ranks, there were whispers of discontent. Many believed the coalition deserved no mercy, no reprieve. The debates within the Terran Council were vicious, the peace terms constantly hanging in the balance. Zhang found herself navigating this treacherous political landscape, walking a tightrope between appeasing Earth Command and fostering a peace that might actually last. It was a task that demanded more from her than any battle she'd fought. One evening, Zhang stood on the observation deck of the Resolute, staring down at the bruised surface of Thalassan Prime. Fires still burned in some districts, and columns of smoke spiraled into the sky. Reconstruction efforts had begun, but they were slow, hindered by logistical challenges and distrust between humans and coalition civilians. Commander Reyes joined her, his presence a quiet comfort. "Hard to believe, isn't it?" he said, nodding toward the planet. "That all of this could have been avoided if they hadn't underestimated us." "Maybe," Zhang replied, her voice distant. "But underestimating us wasn't their only mistake. We made some of our own. And if we're not careful, we'll make even more." Reyes gave her a sidelong glance. "You're thinking about the Council." "I'm thinking about the future," Zhang said. "Right now, we have a choice. We can be conquerors, feared and hated. Or we can be something better, something stronger. But the Council only sees one path forward." Reyes folded his arms. "And you're trying to convince them otherwise?" Zhang's lips twitched into a faint, humorless smile. "It's like trying to turn a battleship with a paddle." Reyes chuckled softly but then grew serious. "You've got allies, Zhang. Don't forget that. What you did, standing up to Earth Command, tempering the terms, it didn't go unnoticed. A lot of us believe in what you're trying to do." Zhang turned to face him fully, her expression unreadable. "And what exactly am I trying to do, Commander?" "Give the galaxy a chance," Reyes said simply. "A chance at something better than endless war." That night, Zhang received a private communication from Earth Command. The familiar visage of Admiral Marlowe appeared on her screen, his features as stony as ever. "Lieutenant," he began, his voice clipped, "the Council has reviewed your recommendations. They've agreed to amend the peace terms, to a degree." Zhang straightened in her chair. "What amendments, sir?" "Reparations will be scaled back," Marlowe said. "Coalition worlds will maintain limited self-governance under Terran oversight. Disarmament will proceed, but we'll leave them enough to defend themselves from external threats." "It's a compromise." Zhang exhaled, a flicker of relief crossing her face. "Thank you, Admiral. This will go a long way toward stabilizing the situation." Marlowe's gaze hardened. "Don't thank me yet, Lieutenant. There are factions within the Council, and within the fleet, who see this as weakness. They're watching you. One misstep, and they'll demand a harsher approach." "I understand," Zhang said. "I'll make sure we don't give them an excuse." "See that you don't," Marlowe said. His tone softened slightly before he ended the transmission. "You're walking a fine line, Zhang. But you're not walking it alone." In the weeks that followed, Zhang threw herself into the work of rebuilding, not just cities, but trust. She organized joint reconstruction efforts, pairing Terran engineers with coalition laborers. She personally oversaw supply drops to coalition refugees, ensuring that food and medicine reached the people who needed it most. Slowly, grudgingly, progress was made. But not everyone welcomed it. On both sides, extremists sought to undermine the fragile peace. On a coalition moon, insurgents attacked a Terran supply convoy, killing dozens. In response, a Terran general ordered a retaliatory strike that left a coalition village in ruins. The cycle of violence threatened to reignite the war. Zhang intervened personally, flying down to the moon to mediate the situation. She met with coalition leaders in a bombed-out hall, standing unarmed before a room full of angry, grieving faces. "Why should we trust you?" one leader demanded, his voice shaking with rage. "Your soldiers killed our families, burned our homes. How can you talk about peace when your hands are soaked in our blood?" Zhang met his gaze without flinching. "Because the alternative is worse," she said. "I can't undo what's been done. But I can stop it from happening again, if you're willing to meet me halfway." It wasn't an easy conversation, but by the end of it, a fragile truce was restored. Zhang returned to the Resolute, exhausted but resolute. Every step forward felt like a battle, but she refused to give up. Months turned into years. The Terran fleet gradually withdrew from coalition space, leaving behind only a token presence. The scars of war remained, but they began to fade, replaced by the slow, painstaking work of rebuilding. Joint trade agreements were signed. Former enemies sat across negotiating tables, hammering out compromises. Trust grew in fits and starts, fragile but real. Zhang remained at the forefront of it all. She rose through the ranks, her name becoming synonymous with the peace she had fought so hard to achieve. To some, she was a hero. To others, a controversial figure who had given too much to the enemy. But Zhang didn't care about the labels. She cared about the results. One evening, years after the war's end, Zhang stood once again on the observation deck of a Terran vessel, staring out at the stars. Beside her was Commander Reyes, now Admiral Reyes, who had remained a steadfast ally through it all. "Think they'll ever forgive us?" Reyes asked, nodding toward the coalition worlds on the displays. Zhang sipped her coffee, a small smile playing on her lips. "Maybe. Maybe not. But they'll remember that we tried. And sometimes that's enough." As the stars stretched endlessly before them, Zhang felt a rare sense of peace. The galaxy was still fragile, still messy, but it was alive. And that, she thought, was worth fighting for.